Eddie Ray Routh was once one of thousands of young veterans trying to find peace after returning home from military service. A former U.S. Marine, Routh had served honorably as a weapons technician and armorer before being discharged in 2010 after a tour in Iraq. Though he never experienced direct combat, Routh returned a changed man. His family and friends began noticing erratic behavior, delusional thinking, and long bouts of depression. Over the years, he was in and out of VA hospitals, diagnosed with schizophrenia and reportedly suffering from PTSD. But consistent care remained out of reach. He often refused medication, and the system struggled to keep him engaged. On the other side of this tragic story was Chris Kyle, the most well-known sniper in U.S. military history. A decorated Navy SEAL with multiple tours in Iraq, Kyle had become a public figure after the release of his best-selling memoir, American Sniper. He dedicated himself to helping fellow veterans cope with trauma, using shooting ranges and outdoor activities as informal therapy. One of those veterans was Eddie Ray Routh. On February 2, 2013, Kyle and his friend Chad Littlefield decided to take Routh to a shooting range near Rough Creek Lodge in Erath County, Texas. The goal was simple: offer support, connection, and a therapeutic day out. Kyle had done this before. This was nothing new. But as the three arrived at the range, something was off. Routh acted distant. Kyle, sensing trouble, quietly texted Littlefield, "This dude is straight up nuts." Despite the unease, they continued. As Kyle and Littlefield began setting up targets, Routh unexpectedly turned on them. Using a pistol from the vehicle, he shot both men from behind at point-blank range. Neither man was armed. The attack was sudden. Neither had a chance to react. Routh fled the scene in Kyle's truck and drove home to Lancaster, Texas. There, he confessed to his sister and her boyfriend, who immediately called police. He was later apprehended after a short police pursuit. At the time of his arrest, Routh reportedly made disturbing statements, saying people were sucking his soul, and that Kyle and Littlefield wouldn't talk to him. Investigators quickly reconstructed the events using Routh's confession, forensic evidence, and ballistics linking the weapon to the murders. As the case moved toward trial, national interest exploded. Routh's attorneys claimed he was legally insane during the shooting. They cited his psychiatric diagnoses, frequent hospitalizations, and recent release from a VA facility. But prosecutors countered that he clearly understood right from wrong. He fled, attempted to evade police, and lied during questioning. Expert witnesses from both sides debated Routh's mental state. The trial became a flashpoint for the broader issue of how the legal system should handle mentally ill defendants, especially veterans. After nearly 2 years of legal back and forth, the trial began in early 2015. The courtroom was packed, and the media closely followed every detail. The jury deliberated just over 2 hours before finding Eddie Ray Routh guilty of capital murder. The insanity defense was rejected. Because prosecutors chose not to pursue the death penalty, Routh received an automatic sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. He remains incarcerated in a Texas penitentiary, and his appeals have been denied. The case had far-reaching consequences. Public reactions were mixed. Some saw Routh as a broken veteran failed by the system, while others viewed him as entirely responsible for taking the lives of 2 men who had only tried to help. The families of Kyle and Littlefield were devastated but spoke publicly about their grief, hoping to raise awareness about veterans' mental health. Chris Kyle's legacy continues through the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, established by his widow, Taya Kyle, to support military families. The tragedy was later dramatized in Clint Eastwood's American Sniper, though the movie ends before the shooting. Still, Routh's crime became permanently intertwined with Kyle's story. This case remains a haunting reminder of what can happen when the invisible wounds of war are left untreated. It also sparked national conversations about how the VA, the legal system, and society at large support, or fail to support, veterans in crisis. 2 lives were lost, 1 irreversibly damaged, and a nation left grappling with the complexities of trauma, mental illness, and justice. Staff Sergeant Robert Bales was once a battle-tested American infantryman. With 4 combat deployments across Iraq and Afghanistan, Bales had built a reputation as a seasoned soldier within the Army's 3rd Stryker Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division. He was stationed at Camp Balambe in Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, serving a role in base security, far from frontline firefights but still deep in a war zone. Despite his commendable service record, troubling signs had begun to surface. Bales had suffered prior injuries, possibly including a traumatic brain injury. He was reportedly battling PTSD and using alcohol as a coping mechanism. Those who served with him describe a man who was angry, mentally worn down, and unstable. Yet he remained deployed. Then came the night of March 11, 2012. In the early morning hours, Bales left his post under the cover of darkness. Alone and heavily armed, he made his way to the nearby Afghan villages of Al-Khozai and Najiban. Over the next hour, he committed one of the most horrifying acts in the history of the U.S. war in Afghanistan. Bales entered homes and began killing. His victims were civilians, men, women, and children, many still asleep. 16 people were killed. 6 others were wounded. Some bodies were set on fire. One man lost 11 family members that night. Survivors described gunshots in the darkness, children screaming, and families being torn apart in an instant. After the rampage, Bales calmly returned to the base and confessed to another soldier. The military immediately launched an investigation. The case sent shockwaves through the Pentagon, the international community, and Afghanistan. The brutality, the randomness, and the fact that it was carried out by a single U.S. soldier without any orders ignited outrage. Afghan President Hamid Karzai condemned the killings. Protests erupted. The U.S. government scrambled to contain the damage, issuing apologies and promising justice. Bales was removed from Afghanistan and transported back to the U.S. He faced 16 counts of premeditated murder, 6 counts of attempted murder, and other charges. His defense team pointed to PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and alcohol abuse. But no formal psychiatric defense was presented. In 2013, Bales pled guilty in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. It was a calculated legal decision meant to spare the victims' families the trauma of a full trial. During sentencing, Bales apologized, calling his actions an act of cowardice. But no apology could undo what he had done. Survivors spoke of the horror, the loss, and the pain that still lingers. The court sentenced Bales to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He now resides at the U.S. Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The Kandahar massacre had immediate and lasting consequences. It severely damaged U.S.-Afghan relations and fueled insurgent propaganda. It raised urgent questions about how the military handles mental health, the consequences of multiple deployments, and whether enough is done to monitor the psychological well-being of troops. For Afghans, the massacre wasn't just a political tragedy. It was deeply personal. Entire families were destroyed. The survivors live with trauma, injury, and loss. Although the U.S. government offered compensation, no payment could truly address the damage done. Within the military, the case sparked introspection. Some who served with Bales were shocked. Others admitted they had noticed troubling signs. The story of Robert Bales is not only about one man's monstrous crime. It's also a painful reminder of the fragile line between service and suffering and the devastating toll that war can exact on both those who fight and those who live in its shadow.